About 20 years ago, Joey and Mike met at Camp Stormcrest near a small mountain town in Oregon, and they became friends instantly. We were both 12, so naturally we shared the same interests. We read the same books, watched the same movies, quoted lines from The Matrix, and acted out scenes from Mortal Kombat. Most of the time we preferred to stick together, just the two of us. I was an average height, broad-shouldered kid with a buzz cut. Mike was loud, dark-haired, with a slight gap between his teeth and a charming grin. Joey was thinner, with fiery red hair. He always wore a black hoodie, and he almost never let go of his soccer ball. That ball could have been called the fourth friend in our group. Joey never liked leaving it unattended. He carried it with him everywhere, and in a matter of minutes he could turn any situation into a game. Thanks to him, boredom never lasted long. We were friends. We were always friends. One evening, the camp gathered around the fire. The counselors strummed guitars and sang songs. We tried to sing along in strange voices, then slipped into telling jokes, then silly stories. Mike recited a ridiculous little rhyme about a boy, and Joey and I laughed so hard we nearly fell into the flames. The firelight flickered, throwing shadows across our faces, the warmth and crackle wrapping around us like a blanket. Whoever has sat by a summer campfire knows that feeling. Eventually, the conversation turned the way it always does, at campfires, toward scary stories. There was the usual stuff, the Queen of Spades, haunted mirrors, ghost dwarfs, all that old folklore. The older counselors had long grown out of such mysticism and drifted away to their cabins, leaving only one with us, the youngest, who insisted we just call him Greg. We kept trying to outscare each other, piling on tailies, until finally one of the girls, Alyssa, brought up a story none of us had heard before. She called it the Tale of Morn. She said that about 10 years ago, long before we arrived, something terrible had happened at this very camp. There's a river nearby, and one summer a boy drowned. The details were fuzzy. Maybe there had been a fight, maybe the counselors weren't watching, or maybe, as the legend claimed, a spirit pulled him under. No one could say for sure. The only fact was that the boy disappeared, and the search went on for days until they found his body downstream. The camp shut down for a couple of years after that. Later, a new owner bought the place, rebuilt it, changed the name, and reopened. At first, swimming in the river was strictly forbidden. But what kind of summer camp would it be without the river? Eventually, they allowed it again. According to the story, on certain moonlit nights, you might still see the drowned boy. He wouldn't speak, Alyssa said. Just stand in the water and beckon with his hand, urging you to join him. Mike, of course, kept interrupting, adding his own exaggerated details. Alyssa swore her older brother had seen the figure just the summer before. He barely got away, she whispered. The boy was standing waist deep in the river, holding out his hand, calling him without saying a word. The voice wasn't in his ears, it was in his head. She shivered as she said it, and we all leaned closer to the fire. Greg, the counselor, tried to laugh it off at first, but when pressed, he admitted something. Once, on a camping trip near that very river, he thought he glimpsed a figure in the water. He couldn't make it out clearly, but a friend of his swore it was a boy. The skin was pale and folded, like it didn't fit right, Greg said quietly. He didn't open his mouth, but somehow I heard him, like a thought that wasn't mine. Greg paused, staring into the fire. I haven't seen him since. Just rumors. The fire died lower as he spoke, and finally Greg clapped his hands. All right, enough. Time for bed. He made sure the flames were put out and marched us toward our cabins. On the way back, Joey joked that Alyssa only wanted an excuse to sneak off with somebody by the river. Mike, grinning, claimed he actually knew the secret ritual to summon Morn. He wouldn't tell us how, though he just pulled a blanket over himself in the cabin and teased that he'd show us someday. He left us intrigued. At breakfast the next morning, Mike leaned across the table and tried to persuade me to go on a nighttime mission with him. We'll call him, he whispered. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled. Adventures were one thing, but creepy legends were another. I tried to distract myself by watching Joey fiddle with his bowl of oatmeal, nervously rolling his soccer ball under the table with his foot. Finally, he muttered, "I don't believe in this morning crap." But you never know. Anything can happen out there in the woods at night. He pushed the ball toward Mike, who caught it under his foot, sipped the last of his cocoa, and grinned at me. Joey added, "It's not like this is the city. This is the middle of nowhere, woods, bears, mosquitoes, and we're not stupid. We're not actually going swimming in the middle of the night." I was secretly relieved he said that. It meant I wasn't the biggest coward in the group. Joey smirked at me and said, "Yeah, everyone's scared. A little, but that's what makes it fun, right?" His words hung in the air for a moment, heavier than he probably intended, and none of us replied right away. The fire from the night before seemed to crackle again in my memory, and suddenly the idea of testing the legend didn't feel like just a joke anymore. "We'll just go there and back," Mike insisted. "Half an hour, tops. The counselors won't even notice." Joey wasn't convinced. He spent half the day uncharacteristically quiet, pacing around like something weighed on him. But by evening, when we picked up a game of soccer, he loosened up again, joking, shouting, pulling faces, imitating Ronaldinho's penalty kicks and feints. He was the best player among us, no doubt, and not for nothing. He actually played in a junior club back home. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretched, and soon darkness began to cover the camp. Everyone else went off toward their cabins for dinner, but the three of us remained behind, as always. Or rather, the four of us, if you counted Joey's ever-present ball. We tried, one by one, to kick it into the basketball hoop. Each of us had 7 tries, and not one of us could land it. The rest of the squads were already gathering for dinner, but we couldn't stop. I stepped forward, slipped my foot under the ball, and sent it arcing high. Looking back, I realized that something clicked in my head right then, an idea of how I could avoid the dreaded nighttime adventure. Because no matter how much I tried to look brave, the truth was the thought of going down to the river scared me stiff. The ball soared, smacked the top of the backboard, and dropped clean through the hoop. Joey froze, wide-eyed. Mike clutched his head in disbelief. I grinned crookedly, but inside I felt uneasy. I'd never gone sneaking around like that without adults, and if the counselors caught us, I'd be done for the rest of the summer. But a bet was a bet. "All right," Mike said contentedly. "Let's go eat." At dinner, we stuffed ourselves quickly, then gathered supplies. 2 apples, a bag of Lay's chips, a flashlight, spare batteries, and a bottle of soda. Back at the cabin, I zipped everything into my backpack and set it by my bed. Soon the rest of the kids returned from the dining hall, noisy and wet from the sudden downpour. They burst inside laughing. I peeked out the window. If the rain kept up, our trip was canceled. But by lights out, the storm had passed. The room quieted, and the 3 of us exchanged looks. That anxious excitement rose in me again, the kind you get when you know you're about to do something you shouldn't. It felt like we were secret agents, preparing for a mission. Suddenly, I was somewhere else. Bright sunlight stabbed at my eyes, forcing me to squint even when I looked at the sand at my feet. The river stretched before me, warm, calm, almost inviting. I stepped in, the water soft against my ankles, then my legs. Goosebumps prickled across my back as a cool wind cut through the heat. Another step, and I plunged forward, headfirst into the water. The sound vanished. The warmth disappeared. The river turned freezing, like mountain snow melt. I couldn't feel the shore anymore. Panic clawed at me. My limbs went stiff, numb. My arms refused to obey. The more I tried to swim, the weaker I became. I lifted my head, gasping, desperate to shout for Joey and Mike, but no sound came out. The river filled my throat, choking off every word. I jolted awake. My heel tingled, someone had tickled me. "What the hell?" I hissed. Mike gave a sharp shee, before slipping quietly out the cabin door so it wouldn't creak. Joey turned away, shoulders shaking as he tried to smother his laughter. I forced myself to breathe slowly. The rain had stopped. It was time. I laced my boots and grabbed my pack. Just then, a light scraping on the window pane made my stomach drop. My head snapped up only to see Mike outside, grinning. I nodded, and for a moment my eyes found Joey's. We both hesitated, but neither of us spoke. Instead, Joey pulled his hood tight, and together we slipped out into the night. "Where you guys going?" a voice whispered. We froze. It was Tony, a round-faced kid whose bed stood by the door. Because of his constant late-night bathroom trips, everyone called him Sprinkler. He sat up, peering at us. "Straight there and back," I whispered quickly. "Nobody's gonna know if you keep quiet?" Tony frowned. "After curfew. What if the counselors see you?" "Come on, it's just a 10-minute walk after the rain," Mike coaxed. "Around the cabins? You can come if you want." Tony shifted uneasily. "I don't know. You've got to pee anyway," Joey muttered. "Do it now and think about it." "We'll wait." Tony scowled, but shuffled toward the latrine, a wooden shed about 20 yards away. The instant the door closed behind him, we bolted. Ducking low, we sprinted across the wet grass. My sneakers were soaked in seconds, and when I flicked on my flashlight, it landed straight in a puddle. "Careful, guys, it's slippery," Joey warned. He stretched his arms out for balance, stepping around the slick mud. Finally, a little beyond the camp fence, we dared to shine our beams ahead. The black trees loomed over us, their branches casting crooked shadows that looked like claws. Our hearts pounded as we found a narrow trail leading toward the river. My sneakers slapped loudly with every step, scaring away crickets and who knew what else lurking in the grass. I wished I could walk quietly, but every step of my soaked sneakers slapped against the ground, echoing like something unnatural. It sounded like the calls of strange swamp creatures, each step betraying us. Joey burst out laughing at the noise, and Mike followed with a shrill laugh of his own. We made our way down to the river and stopped at the old wooden pier. The boards creaked and stuck under our feet, sticky with damp moss. We sat on the edge, dangling our legs over the black water. We unpacked our provisions, apples, chips, and crackers crunching loudly as though the noise could scare off whatever shadows lingered in the trees. Mike couldn't wait. He grabbed the flashlight and began tracing shapes on the water's surface, circles, spirals, figure eights, his face serious. None of us spoke. We just listened, waiting, as if expecting the drowned boy to rise out of the river. The pier stretched into the dark, vanishing between the pines. On the far bank, the trees climbed steeply, their branches hanging low, brushing the surface of the water. The moonlight shimmered faintly across them. Joey shifted uneasily, but tried to cover it with a laugh. "It's fine," he said. "It's just quiet here. Too quiet." "There's no wind," Mike muttered, his voice tense. "Feels like someone's out there, watching." He swept the flashlight across the riverbank. "I swear I can feel his eyes on me." Joey snorted and tried to laugh, but the sound cracked. I forced myself to laugh too, though it came out hollow. There really was no wind, no rustling leaves, no rushing water, just silence. "Well, looks like he's off duty tonight," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Mike shook his head. "He could be anywhere. Maybe on the opposite bank. They say he hides in the bushes, just stands there all night." A shiver ran down my spine. I didn't want to admit it, but waiting here felt unbearable. My nerves buzzed. The unease grew sharper, like a whisper brushing my ear, faint but insistent, as if someone had thrown a heavy stone into the water right beside me. Mike cursed suddenly. Damn, it just scared him away with all that noise. He slapped his watch like a referee, imitating a stadium announcer. 2 minutes of added time. Joey chuckled, but I stayed quiet. I wasn't going to tell them about the whisper in my head. They'd never let me hear the end of it. Then I heard it, a splash. Not the kind of ripple from a fish, but something heavy, something alive. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Mike swung the flashlight to the right. The beam froze on Joey's backpack, lying half open on the boards. The ball had rolled out. It was floating a few yards from the pier, bobbing strangely, unmoving in the current. Joey's face drained of color in the moonlight. "That's mine," he said hoarsely. "But how?" The ball hung there unnaturally still, as if pinned in place. Mike bent to grab a handful of pebbles and threw them one by one. The ball shivered, swayed, then began drifting slowly downstream. Mike scrambled closer, reaching over the edge, but the ball stayed just out of reach. "Joey, you're the tallest. Lie down, we'll hold you," I said. There wasn't a second to think. Joey dropped flat, stretching out his arms over the black water. I grabbed his legs for balance while Mike braced his shoulders. "Got it?" Mike urged. "I almost have it," Joey's voice cut off with a choked cry. Something yanked him forward violently. His head plunged beneath the water. Mike shouted, seizing Joey's jacket with one hand while clutching a wooden post with the other. He kicked desperately, screaming, "Help me. Something's got him." For a heartbeat, I was frozen. My chest pounded, sweat pouring down my temples. Joey's head stayed underwater too long, far too long. Then panic tore through mine. Lunged forward, wrapping my arms around his neck and shoulders, pulling with all my strength. Mike clawed at him too, barely holding on. We heaved him up onto the boards, Joey coughing, choking, spewing river water. His eyes were wide with terror. He tried to speak, but his mouth only opened soundlessly. That's when I saw it. Just beyond the pier, pale, slimy hands broke the surface. A face emerged, if you could call it that. The skin hung in loose folds, bloated and gray, like it belonged to someone 100 years old. Its empty sockets burned with a mad light, and where a mouth should have been gaped, a rotten hole, curling upward into something that looked like a smile. I froze, paralyzed, as that grin fixed on me. And then, the reflection of the moon still burned in my mind, and my eyes stayed chained to the crooked patterns of the linoleum in the counselor's cabin. I sat there in silence. Joey was trying to explain something, stumbling over his words as he led several counselors back toward the pier. I just sat on the table, quiet as stone, for what felt like an eternity. All the while, one detail gnawed at me, something I had missed the night before. The ball. I remembered how it had floated toward the pier slowly, lazily, and worst of all, it moved against the current. How could I not have noticed?
That bitch was just playing with us.